Hey everyone, it's Corey from Blue Falcon Board Gaming. If you're new to the channel, I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran that started Blue Falcon Board Gaming in the Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia tri-state area with the hopes of promoting positive mental health through board gaming, as well as making board games more accessible to the community by hosting and co-hosting free events. Today, or this morning, it's early morning for me, I get to interview Ron and TJ from the High Kick board game. Good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's start with TJ here. TJ, can you give us a little bit of background info about yourself outside of the board game community? Just what's a normal day look like for you?
Yeah, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Have for most of my life. Spent some time in Tennessee and some time in Florida. I've got 2 girls, 2 boys, and a wife, and a dog, and a cat. And during the day, my day job is digital marketing manager. So I handle branding, designs, marketing, website development for various companies throughout the country and the world.
Awesome. Ron, what about you?
I'm originally from Nova Scotia, Canada. I am a professional cartographer, so I make maps for a living. And of course, now you know that kind of branched over to board game design as well. But I currently live in Brazil. I've moved to South America in 2004. And I live in, I said Sao Paulo. And that's basically it. But I've been making maps for 25 years, and I've been working in board games for the last 7.
Yeah, so like I was kind of telling you too in the little pre-interview section here, you're actually the 3rd person I've got to do an interview with that's international. So that's really fun. Mark that off my little bucket list.
Yeah, and it's get Brazil crossed off. Yeah, but I'll have to introduce to some more people down here because there are a lot of board games that come out of Brazil that people may not realize that the designers are Brazilian. Perhaps cartographers. Have you played cartographers, or have you heard of? Obviously, I have because I am a cartographer. But the designer is Brazilian, Jordi Aden, and Sheriff of Nottingham is done by a Brazilian designer. So there are a lot of people that that game's Brazilian, or that designer is Brazilian. So there is a pretty active community down here. But as far as I know, I am the only foreigner involved in it. So it's fun. It's fun having that outside knowledge and or being the gringo, as they say.
So TJ, how did you get into board games? What was your introduction to that?
It was probably back around, I think, 2015. I mean, I've been into board games my whole life, of course, the standard monopolies and risks and, what not everybody grew up on, the Milton Bradley and Hasbro stuff. But then in 2015, my sister came to visit from Massachusetts, and she brought her kids, her family, and she brought some board games. Didn't know what they were, and it was actually Catan and Zombicide. And so I played both of those. I was kind of hooked as to, wow, what are these things? Is it totally different? Is this something foreign? But we played it a couple more times. I ended up liking it, ended up buying it. And that was kind of the beginning of getting me interested into learning what this whole new brave world of board gaming was.
Yeah, I'm looking at Zombicide Night of the Living Dead right now on my shelf over here. I'm still wanting to... I caught it on sale. One of the board game shops around here, they were running a big sale. I caught it for like $40. It's usually about $99 in that range. So I need to get it busted out. So Ron, how did you get into board game? What was your introduction to it?
Well, of course, like TJ, and especially being from Canada where it's cold 6 months of the year, we played board games a lot growing up. All the classics, Trivial Pursuits, and my sisters liked the Garfield and My Little Pony type games. So we ended up playing a lot of that. And then, I got more into video games, but in about the same time that TJ got back into it, 2014, 2015, one of my wife's colleagues brought Dixit and Catan and Carcassonne and all those games over to our house. I was like, oh my gosh, what is all this? What's happened in the last 20 years? This is so much more fun, more interesting, more, such. And then at that time I was actually living in Peru because I said I've been in South America for almost 20 years now. And we knew we were moving in about a year, and I just wrapped up a mapping contract. So I had 2 choices. I was like, well, am I going to look for another professional work? Or maybe I could take this year and see if I can come up with a board game, because I had met some Peruvian board game designers at some Comic-Con type events there, and I talked it over with my wife, and she said, "Yeah, go for it. Like the worst case scenario is you'll make a game and you'll have 1,000 copies to sell for the rest of your life, to give out to friends and family, right?" So I talked to that publisher there, and they said, "Well, I'd really like to have a more family friendly game because all I have are war games." So I gave him a couple ideas. He liked one of them, and it was published there. And that was my first introduction to board games. And since then, I've been hooked. I'm not full time yet. I still work half time in my professional capacity as a cartographer, and the other half of the time I'm working in the board games. Either in my own designs or helping or participating in other people's games, whether it's, for example, the map for Hike It, or translating Portuguese games into English, that kind of stuff. Whatever I can help out a lot of times.
Nice. Yeah, my introduction, it was I was working at a drop-in homeless shelter, and there was a bunch of guys that they were younger and everything, and it was like kind of that stereotypical high school clique, standoffish, like we're the cool kids. We don't want to talk to the staff or anything. And I was like, how can I get in with these guys just to, talk to them about services, build their rapport with them, all of that. And they were playing Magic one day, and I was like, what is this? Like, I'd played Yu-Gi-Oh! In high school and stuff, but that was, 8 years ago or whatever, from 2016. So I learned how to play Magic. They, taught me and everything, got me into it, and like I went way too deep into it. Way too deep into it. But that was like the modern style board gaming, because as I was looking up deck building stuff for Magic, I got thrown over to Dice Tower and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, what is this? Like, this isn't, Monopoly in life. Like, TJ was kind of saying earlier, like, this is some heavy looking games. And Scythe was my first like modern board game that I got into. And then I'm sitting at like 328 games now or something. That's way too much. So TJ, can you tell us about Hiking? You're the designer, main designer for it. Ron, you're co-designer now. Is terms correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let TJ talk about the creation of the game, but what happened was a couple of years ago when TJ was looking for advice about the map, or he posted in the Facebook group called the Board Game Design Group there, and he posted some images of the game and the map that he had at that point. And I looked at it and said, that's a game I would like to be involved in, because I could see where you wanted to take the map. And because I am a professional map maker, I could say, I know where you want to take this map. I know where you want it to go. And because he was saying how he wanted the game to be as realistic as possible, and he wanted a realistic map. So, and I'd already made a map for one of my previous games, which is called Seven Bridges. So I knew that I wanted the opportunity to make maps, not just for my own games, but for other people's games. And, but very specifically, real world maps, because some people might hear the word cartographer and think that I also do like fantasy world maps, but I'm no good at that. I'm good at making maps of real places. And so when I saw what TJ and how much work he put into it already, and it was right up my alley. So I reached out to him, I gave him a sample, and he's like, yeah, we should be working together on this. And after a while, I took on a bit larger role, I'd say 20%, 25%, 20, somewhere around there, because since this was TJ's first game and I have a few under my belt, I was able to make some suggestions and tweak some of the rules and stuff. And TJ was open to those ideas. And after a while, he said, look, you're doing more than I ever imagined. Let's get your name on the box too. So that was a very gracious act on TJ's part. And I'll just let TJ talk about how he came up with the game.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. I think I started my hiking kind of career around the same time I started understanding, getting into board games around 2014-ish. But it wasn't until about 2018, I believe, 2017 or 18. When I'm hiking and you're going out hiking, there's that feeling of being totally disconnected, reliant on what you're taking. And when you get done with it, you have this exhilarating rush of accomplishment that you've just gone out for 3 to 5 days and survived in the woods, and you're back and you're exhausted, you're sweaty, you're smelly, but you're just elated. And I don't do a lot of winter hiking. I hate being out in the cold and the snow and sleeping when it's, below freezing. So that one particular year, I was just thinking, wow, I kind of can't wait for hiking season to come back around. What can I do in the meantime to kind of get that rush, get that feeling? So I thought, man, maybe there is a board game. And I started looking into the different board games that are kind of thematic about hiking. And there were a few out there, but they didn't give you that feeling. They were a little more of a friendlier kind of hiking game. So the idea for me was just a fun exercise at the time. I had an 8-foot whiteboard in my office, and it was what would a realistic hiking game kind of look like if I was to create it? I had no intention of being a designer, wasn't even thinking about publishing a game. I just like the exercise and the fun, play of just whiteboarding out of the rules and the mechanics and what it would look like, just to satisfy my own mind. And it just kind of grew from there to where every now and then I would see it on the whiteboard and I would touch it up or do something or write something. And finally I got little pieces of paper and a little prototype together and started playing around by myself. Then brought the kids in, to kind of play it and say, hey, what'd you think of something like this? Does that sound fun or sound cool? And they liked it. And then friends started coming over and it kind of grew. And then 4 years later, we're here publishing one or almost publishing one on Kickstarter. That's kind of the origin story of it. So, the game was born on an idea of total thematic realism. I want you to feel like you're out there, feel what, once you get done playing this game, you might have a slight sense of what it's like to kind of be out backpacking.
So what do you think are some good examples on how the game plays that conveys that message really well? Like, what do you think, just a couple examples of maybe like, hey, you get to do X, Y, Z, and that was because of this.
Some examples of how the mechanics kind of tie into the theme is your pack weight. This game's based on action points. So each turn, you kind of count up how many action points you have, and they change. And your pack weight's one of those variables on how many actions you have. So the more gear that you're carrying to be better prepared for any unexpected event, the slower that you're going to go, the less action points that you're going to go. So that's kind of one mechanic. Another one is the weather. So there is a 3-day weather forecast in the game that you have visibility into, and you can prepare for if you want to. But preparing for it sometimes means going out of your way on the trail to stop at a camp to resupply or find a water source, which could take you a little bit longer to get to your destination. Do you want to push your luck? Do you want to go down and do that? Or do you want to say, okay, maybe because that is a weather forecast, doesn't mean it's going to actually happen or hit you. But there is a decent chance that it will. And the weather is kind of based at, like I said, everything's realistic. So the weather, the amount of cards that's as far as sun and rain and storms and, heat is based on the weather patterns of the Smoky Mountains as well. So yeah, those are two really good examples. There's a bunch more in there. One of the good one is the skills. So you have gear that you carry throughout, tools and first aids and clothing and shelter and water. That you carry to counter challenges. But as you're out in the backwoods, when you're overcoming these challenges, just like in real life, you learn. And so you're building skills and skill sets in the game. So you're collecting these skill cards and you're trading them up for skill sets. And then eventually when you get some of these skill sets, they can help you counter what you don't have in gear. So say maybe you're missing something in your pack, but you've learned, certain things that you can overcome without needing the physical gear. So that's another mechanical example of kind of tying it into realism as to what it would be like being in the backwoods, because you don't always have the right gear for it, but sometimes you have the knowledge to kind of overcome that.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, having worked on the map itself is really about as realistic as you'll ever see in a board game in this type. All the trails in the map are real trails in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. All the locations along the trails are real. All the campsites are in the real locations. So, and even the points on the map, because it is a point-to-point movement game, like you're hiking, from place to place to get to where you got to go. And the points themselves are exactly 1 mile apart. Like they're actually like this, the map itself, the board itself is in a mapping software. We didn't use Adobe or any other graphic software. It's actually a mapping software. So it's actually a map at 1 to 100,000 scale. You could actually measure distances on it. And you can see that those points are exactly 1 mile apart, which is great because it's cool, and it's super fun for players to say, oh, I walked 8 miles today, exactly that, because it's just, and that was nothing that TJ actually asked to do. I saw the scale of the map and I said, and how the points had to be apart. I'm like, I think I can put those points exactly 1 mile apart, and that'll be really fun, and realistic kind of. So the map itself is like I said, as realistic as I think you'll ever see in a game of this type. Because of how the trails are all laid out, how everything was taken, and then the background of the map itself, the part that you don't play, has all the contours and rivers and roads and road signs and towns and villages and elevations. So you can really, even when you're not playing, you see people looking at the map saying, "Oh, look, there's Pigeon Forge. Oh, look, there's Townsend." All these places around the park and fun little names that we found to kind of fill in the spaces on the map, outside of the trails, right? So people can enjoy looking at the board while while they're playing. So that was one of the reasons why I was so intrigued with the project and wanted to be part of it, because I knew that that's what TJ was looking for.
Yeah, one of the highlights of that game is that map, and what Ron's done with it is just amazing. When I first started working with him, and he said he was using a mapping software, I was a little worried. I was worried we were going to get some really technical looking, map and not a board gamey creative map. But if you've ever seen the map up close and in person, it's just unbelievable. And whenever anybody plays the game, that's the one thing they always comment on, is just how gorgeous that board is. So I'm very impressed.
And one of the nice things we did is that TJ asked me if I could make two versions of the map, because the map itself is Great Smoky Mountains National Park. That's where you play, but it has information outside the map as well. And he asked me for one version with green inside the map, inside the park, and one version with green outside the park, just to see how they would look, right? And they both turned out great. And when we started asking people online, polling people which map you prefer, it was basically 50-50. So we decided to just put both maps in the game, and the board is double-sided. You can choose the one that you like most. So, and that's great for me, because I wanted to have both maps in the game. So, yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I saw the game set up at Sin City Con last month, and it was an instant eye catcher. I had to walk over, check it out. Table presence is beautiful with it. And it was definitely, one of the maps is definitely it, but just all of the player boards and everything else too. Just the table presence looks very, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, TJ's done a lot of work on that.
What's like a typical turn? What's gameplay look like?
Typical turn is your turn is done. When it comes to your turn is done in 3 phases. The morning phase, which is you're checking the weather. So you wake up in the morning and you have that weather forecast. Whatever today's weather is, you roll 4 weather die. And it's custom dice that are each one's specific to be weighted to kind of come up with certain weather. So if you roll those 4 weather dice and any of those 4 dice matches today's weather forecast, then that forecast became accurate. And then you have to deal with that weather, whether it's being just a sunny day or it's rainy, stormy, too hot, too cold. And that particular weather will have certain requirements. So if it is raining, you're going to have to either use a clothing gear to get some kind of a poncho or some wet weather gear on. Or you have the choice of possibly just putting up your shelter, using a shelter gear or tile to get out of the rain. So once you overcome that weather, you move on to the action phase, which then you add up the actions that you have. And your pack board kind of tracks your actions, and your actions are based on 3 things: your health meter, the amount of gear you're carrying, and how many waypoints that you've collected so far. So you add those up and say it's anywhere between 5 and 15. And then once you figure out what your actions are, that's when you actually take your actions. And your actions are mostly going to include actually hiking. So 1 action is equal to 1 mile that you can travel. But you also use actions to collect gear and collect water at the water sources and the campsites throughout the park. Once you finish up your action phase, then that's the afternoon phase. And then you move into the evening phase, which is the trail card phase. So basically you're done with your hike. You draw a trail card. There's 100 of them in there. And it's a random event that could have happened that day. Some of them are positive. They give you rewards for doing good things. Some are neutral and just kind of move the game along. And a good chunk of them are challenges, like, oh, you sprained your ankle, or you're getting a blister, or, the mosquitoes are attacking you, or something that you have to overcome. So then once you get through those 3 phases, that's the end of your turn and the end of your day, basically, and it moves on to the next person. And you just continue going through every day, hiking as much as you can, collecting as many scenic spots as you can, building up your skill sets as you go through, which is going to help you not only get through these challenges, but also acquire points. And ultimately, you're going to have 3 waypoints throughout the park. The park is divided into 3 regions, central, eastern, and western. And at the beginning of the game, you have a waypoint in each of those 3. So you start off at a trailhead, and you have to travel across the width of the park to get all 3 of those and then make it back to your trailhead. And that's ultimately how you end your game, almost end your game.
Awesome. Yeah. So what's the, you said the health meter. What's your health meter look like? What's it do? How is your health, impacted? Like, can you run out of health?
Yeah. So at the start of the game, you have 5 health, and anytime that you aren't able to overcome one of the morning weather challenges or the evening trail card challenges, then you lose 1 health, because either you weren't equipped for the weather, and you're going to get sick or not feel well, or maybe you sprained your ankle and you didn't have first aid kit. So every time you aren't able to deal with one of those challenges, you lose a health. So that's why it's important to be well prepared. But it's not always necessary, because you can take different strategies. You can either be always well prepared and travel slow and steady, or you can kind of run and gun and like hope that nothing happens to you and just like whip through the park as fast as you possibly can. So it's not, we're not forcing you to be well prepared. It's up to you, right? And you can get health back during the game as well if you accomplish certain goals. You can camp, and we have campsites, campfires that you can place at campsites, and those reveal bonuses, including a health bonus. And if you collect certain combinations of skill sets, then you can also recover health as well. So that's how that works. And you can also trade with players during your turn if they're in the same region of the park. So let's say I'm not prepared. Let's say it's raining and I didn't have a tent, but TJ's in the same region with me, and I can say, hey, TJ, you have a tent. Would you mind trading me your tent for water or some skill set tokens or something like that? Because you can trade a lot of different things during the game, even things that are worth victory points at the end of the game. So, or maybe something that he needs for his side quests, because in addition to your main journey, you can go on side hikes, and side hikes provide victory points at the end of the game. And some of those side hikes are set collection type quests. And maybe I might need a certain specific thing that he has, and I can say, well, I'll give you water, but you need to give me a tent and 2 of those mountain icons. And so he kind of knows, oh, well, if I give him that, maybe I'm giving him 8 points at the end of the game. So there's a bit of negotiation going on there too. And also, if you just want to let the person lose a health, you don't have to trade, so there's a lot of that going on too. You can see people going, no, I'm fine. You can lose a health, right? So it's really fun. That's one of the, when that happens and you have that, oh, how can I avoid getting health or losing health? And people start trying to and then maybe if I didn't help you before, you won't help me later, right? So there's a lot of that, like 20 minutes later, where someone's like, I remember you didn't help me last time, so I'm not going to help you now either. So so even though it is a realistic game, there are a lot of really fun elements as well it's not dry. Being realistic doesn't mean that it's dry. And I think TJ would probably like to talk about one of the end mechanic of the game now, where the bears come into play.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the health, losing health is not just losing action points, but losing actions, but it's also losing points at the end of the game as well. And this game does not have player elimination, because if you do, because of not being able to overcome challenges, your health drops down to 0. You basically have to just skip a turn. You lose your next turn. And thematically, that is you saying, okay, I can't hike anymore because my health is so poor. I have to sit, rest, relax. And you basically have to regenerate some health back before you can get back on, and you can work your way into getting a little bit more health back to help try to get you out of the park or get you to where you need to go. But speaking of player elimination, there is also the fact of, if you do complete your hike, say you're in a 4-player game and you do get back to your trailhead and your vehicle safe, your game's not over at that point either, because there's 3 bears in the park, 1 in each region, and during most of the game they kind of just roam around here and there blocking paths. They don't do anything. They're not mean. They're kind of passive, but they do get in the way, and you're not allowed to go through bears when they're passive and just kind of sitting around. But once the first player or any player gets back to their trailhead, their hike is done. They're no longer a hiker. They come back into the game with a new objective as an aggressive bear. So once I'm done hiking, all the points that I've collected, all the skills I've collected, all the scenic tokens I've collected are all mine. They're back at my car, and now I'm rolling a bear die with 3 potential options on movement, different ways to move, and I'm now trying to chase the fellow hikers out of the park so they're not collecting any more points. So that's kind of how we've got rid of any player elimination, and adding in kind of a fun secondary kind of role and objective. So when you are done with your hike, you're not just sitting around waiting for other people.
Yeah, a lot of people have compared it to, they say it feels a lot like Clank, where you have that kind of reversal at the end of the game, and it really is a reversal. People they like in that elevator pitch that we give at conventions, where we say, yeah, okay, you start at your car, you're going to see 3 places in the park, and then come back to your car. And once you're done, to make sure that other players don't cherry pick the victory points that are left on the map, you become a bear and start chasing them out of the park. People just, their eyes open, they start laughing, they say, oh, that sounds like such fun. And it really is, so we're really happy about how that mechanic developed and evolved over time to where it is now, because it's always that kind of I don't know, incognito at the end of the game. Because if everybody gets out of the game at the same time, that's fine. The Bears don't really get into play, but sometimes we are trying to get out before the Bears come into play. But like last night, we had someone take pictures of their play because they have a copy of the game. And it was the first time they played with 4 players, and they showed us the picture of the bear on top of the hiker meeple, who was literally 4 spaces away from getting out of the park. They were that, and so they had been chased down and they just didn't make it out of the game, right? So, and you can tell that they had a lot of fun with that kind of, and it is tense. It's tense, but it's fun. I've never played a game that changes the dynamics in such an interesting way at the end. Because a lot of times you'll play a game, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but you can kind of see the end of the game 3 rounds before, and it's kind of predictable. You might not know who won, but nothing's going to change in those last 2 or 3 rounds. You might just be playing out the game, right? And this just turns on its head. It's really a genius little mechanic that TJ came up with to avoid any sensation at all of that player elimination, right? And to keep those and keep people who have finished their hike in the game.
And one of the best things that not only that mechanic, but I think this game does, is that a lot of the feedback we get from the testings and with Gen Con and the play testings and whatnot, was that this game creates stories to where when people are playing it, they're laughing, they're hooting, hollering, cheering each other on at the end of the game. Every time we've ended the play tests, you want to get right into the questions. Okay, what was your favorite part? How'd this make you feel? But they usually spend a good 10, 15 minutes just like comparing stories. Oh, remember that time when you were doing this and that bear came down hauling on, and it's just fun. And so we just sit there and like listen to them talk for a while before we actually got into those questions. But those stories that are created, those experiences and moments from the game are kind of one of my favorite things when I'm watching people play this game. And the Bears do a lot for these stories. I'll tell you that.
I love when games can create that, like just the accidental randomness, and it just aligns perfectly though to a story. Like me and my buddy, we were playing Skeptics from UCAC games a few weeks ago, and each round, you draw a event card, and that tells you what happens. And it happened to be the one, players in a numbered room, they were knocked on the back of the head, they fall unconscious. And then you draw the ghost card to see where the ghost appears at. Well, I got knocked unconscious. I was the only one. And then the random ghost card that popped up, it was in my room, like the room that I was in. And it was just like, this makes perfect sense. Like,
yep.
So you guys, whenever I checked this morning, you're at 91% on Kickstarter for funded with 9 days left. And you're kind of doing a big blitz to try to get funded by tomorrow to offer some additional perks. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. We've done a little recalibrating of the campaign recently, speaking with some industry professionals. And so we've actually, as of a couple of days ago, unlocked immediately, just due to the funding we already have, was able to financially be able to unlock 2 of the first stretch goals. And we wanted to kind of give one more, but the one we really wanted to give was the dual layered pack boards, or the dual layered player boards. So in order to do that, we really wanted to make sure we were funded, because the earlier we get funded with still, a week left, we'll have a pretty good trajectory of getting a couple other things unlocked. So we decided to go ahead and offer that. So by Monday afternoon, Ron, what time is it? Noon or 1 noon?
Yeah, noon Eastern on Monday. We'd like to be funded. We're at 92% now. We got a couple backers since you looked, and that means I think 35 more backers and we'll be funded. We had 25 yesterday in the last 24 hours, and I think now would be the last 24 hours of this blitz. So 35 backers is certainly achievable, especially since we'll be posting about it today a bit more. And that'll get us funded, and that will unlock the dual layer boards immediately. And they're one of the higher stretch goals, so we might still have a chance of getting those, but it'd be nice to guarantee them because it's something that we wanted to have in the game all along. And then as TJ said, the earlier we fund, the better chance we'll have to, reach some of those stretch goals later on once people come by the campaign and see it, either coming back to it since we made the improvements or seeing it for the first time at the end, because I'm sure you know how Kickstarter campaigns go, that you're going to get that big boost near the end, right? And we have one of our big advantages is that TJ did a lot of work getting the mailing lists and things like that ready. So we have a lot of, a good number of people, in that list, who are going to receive that 48-hour notification at the end of the campaign, right? It's not, so it's a couple thousand people. So we should hopefully get a nice solid boost, especially from people who either seeing it for the first time or coming back and seeing how we've improved the campaign and the funding and the structure based on that information, those conversations that we had with some of the people that we've met in the industry who wanted to see the game fund and wanted to see the game fund well, and offered their professional advice at no charge. They're just like, here's some suggestions you can make, or here's some things you could possibly tweak to make sure that first you keep everybody who's on board, right? Because you don't want everybody knows that after a while you start losing some backers who were kind of on the fence. So we've not had any attrition at all. The people, all the comments, if you were to go into the comments, you're going to see everything's positive. You're not going to see anybody really complaining about things that, I went through a failed Kickstarter once and with a roll and write game. I don't know if you're a fan of roll and write games, but there's always, people, not everybody loves roll and write games. So, you'll get some comments on those kind of campaigns that are kind of disheartening, right? But everybody who's come into this campaign and commented has either been super positive or offered constructive, positive criticism because they want to see the game get funded. And we took a lot of that to heart. And, if someone comes into the campaign now, they're going to, if they like the game at all, they are going to consider backing it. So we're really happy where we're at now.
Yeah, the only I wouldn't say negative feedback was just people really wanting those extra stretch goals to be unlocked. And I just wanted to make it clear that we are. I would love to see as many of these unlocked as possible, but financially it's very hard with the margins, and we're working on such thin margins right now. If you look at the game's only $55, and you might say $55, that just doesn't sound like only. But if you look at the components in the Kickstarter, almost all of them come set up as wood. Your meeples and all those are all wood out of the box. All the cards are linen finish. The boards are linen finish. So I ultimately want to deliver the best game possible. And we try to figure out a way of possibly even deluxifying it even more, making the price point higher. But I really want it to be, because we have a lot of board gamers coming in getting this, and we have a lot of hikers coming in getting this. And these hikers that aren't true board gamers, they look at a $70 price tag and might freak out. So I just wanted to make sure that this was a fair price with decent components with the option to upgrade. So that's all we're trying to do right now is I want to get this game out with as many of these upgrades as possible because I want to play a deluxified version of this game as well. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I got the notify me upon launch notification, instant back. I was like, this is going to be
Thank you for
fantastic.
that.
My buddy Thomas, he did the same thing too. I think he had talked with you, TJ. If not, it was somebody else that was working the booth at Sin City. I was kind of stuck there at the tables running everything for the Envoy tournaments and stuff, but I got to look at it. But by the time I got over there, like everybody else was already gone and stuff, so I got to at least see the game and all of that and look at the cards, and just the quality already is what really got me to it, especially for only $55 too. You figure most games right now, you're looking at least $80 realistically, yeah, if you're getting a game with that many components and that quality and everything.
Yeah, and that is the thing. If this game does end up having a life after Kickstarter in retail of some sort, it is going to be higher than $55. So I also wanted to make sure that those people that are coming on and backing us in this early phase of the game are going to not only get a great game, but get it for a better price than what you will find it a little bit later. So
very nice. And just to clarify for anybody watching in the future, the Monday goal is November 7th, 2022.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Noon Eastern to try to get the game funded for that, to immediately unlock that stretch goal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what are 3 games right now that you guys are excited to get to the table? Whether it's something that's, in shipping or they're about to be released or you've had them for a while and you just haven't gotten to the table yet. What 3 games are you excited to play?
Yeah, I've got 3 that I'm like opening the door every day, hoping it's like sitting on my front porch. And those 3 that I'm so excited to get is Endless Winter, which I'm assuming should be here any day. The next one is Encyclopedia, which was a Kickstarter funded, and I know that's probably still a couple weeks away, I believe. And then Wayfarer of the South Tigris, I think it was. That's the other one that I'm just so excited to get to the table, and that one should be coming in a couple weeks. But yeah, those are the 3 that are at the top of my list. to get onto my shelf and get onto my table?
For me, I don't have too many games coming in right at the moment, but I do have a couple that I want to get to the table soon. One is Brazil Imperial, which I don't know if you've heard of that one. That came out. That's a Brazilian game, obviously, and I helped work on that a bit. And I played it. I play tested it, but I haven't had a chance to play the published version yet.
I just bought that at SimCityCon, so I've yet to play that one.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to playing that because it's always nice to play a game that you were somewhat involved in, right? So, and I worked on the translation of the material for that, and it's beautiful. It's one of the that game has table presence. Too much. I'm trying to think of how to say it in English because a Portuguese slang came to my head, and that's not going to be understood. But it's amazing. And actually, a little game. I just happen to have it here because it's probably not a game that very many people are familiar with, and it just happens to be here. It's called King's Kilt. Now, I picked this up at Gen Con at the in the consignment room because this is one of Gordon Hamilton's earlier games. Gordon Hamilton is the designer of Santorini. Mm-hmm. And I am friends with him because I said I grew up in Nova Scotia, but I moved out to Calgary for work, and I met him out there before he ever had Santorini. We actually met each other playing volleyball, and then he came out with Santorini, and obviously I have that. And then I saw he has some older games, and then I was like, I don't even know how I found this little tiny box in the room, the gigantic room there. And one of the reasons I wanted this game is because it is one of the first ones, and because his name is Hamilton, his name is in this game. Like Hamilton is one of the families you play in the game, so so I'm really looking forward to getting that to the table, just because I want to play one of his games. And the third game that I'm looking forward to actually getting soon is a game that came out in Brazil here. It's called Masai, which is an Afro-Brazilian game. And you're working on building up your color palettes on your necklaces and things like that. I backed that one in a Brazilian crowdfunding campaign, and that's actually should be delivered in the next month or so. So I'm really looking forward to playing that one because I played that one. I didn't have anything to do with it. I played at an event, and it was great. So I wanted to add that to my collection.
Yeah, I think right now for me, I just got Final Girl Season 1. That Kickstarter just delivered last week to me. I've opened up all of the boxes and looked at everything, but I haven't even got the chance to get it to the table yet. I just started a new position at work on Monday, so I've been going through training for it all week and everything, and it's been hectic just learning all of the new stuff in the position that I was already kind of familiar with it, but just learning like the actual nitty-gritty of it. And then It also switched me back to be on work at home 4 days a week, and it's just been kind of a big adjustment period this week. I'm not a big fan of change. So the week leading up to it, it was just like constant panic attacks just for no reason, just knowing that change was on the rise, and then, getting accustomed to being back at work at home. And then the new Zombicide Wild West, I just got the notification, I think it was yesterday, that, they're finally able to hit the U.S. ports and everything because they had some issues with the hurricanes and all of that. So hopefully that will be arriving soon. And then the Queen Kickstarter that I'd backed for Helsinki, I did the deluxe version of Helsinki and the deluxe version of Copenhagen as an add-on. They just did the pledge manager and everything for that, and I'm super excited about that. Copenhagen's probably my most played game on BGA. I've easily got over 150 plays of it on BGA.
You should definitely let the designer know that, because designers love it when they find out that people play one of their games that often.
Yeah, Travis Reynolds, he runs Charcon here up in Charleston, West Virginia. And I don't know what his specific role is with Queen, but like he has the Queen English Facebook page that he monitors and all of that, and he does a lot of different things with Queen. He's the one that got me into so many Queen games. You were talking about roll and rights. I've got Copenhagen roll and right, Escape roll and right, and the Alhambra roll and right. I won that at Charcon as a little raffle package. I bought $100 worth of tickets, and they had just a plethora of stuff out there, and I was just putting a few tickets in each bucket and ended up getting that. What else is over there? The Escape Big Box. I mean, that's like $150 by itself. So I was like, hey.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I made out with about $300 worth of games between the raffles and the play to wins and stuff from Charcon. It was great. So, TJ, do you want to tell us where we can find all of the info for Hike It? Facebook page, any Twitter, Instagram, anything like that?
Yeah, I'll just point you to one place. If you just, to keep it simple, go to hikeit.games. That's the main website for it. That will link you to the Facebooks, to the BGG, to the Kickstarter. I would tell you the Kickstarter URL, but it's way too long for anybody to remember and for me to even say. So just go to hikeit.games, and you can find everything you need there and links to everything else.
Awesome. Ron, you had mentioned that you did 7 bridges earlier. Is that still available for purchase anywhere, or where can we find more info about any of your games?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, the good news is that it sold out because we had it was a modest success, and everybody seemed to like it for the most part. And but the bad news is that it hasn't come out in a second printing yet, partially because of the pandemic and the shipping things. And it came out with a small publisher, so they're waiting for things to kind of normalize a little bit before we go with a second printing, or maybe find a partner publisher to increase the quantity, right? So there's nothing on the horizon at the moment for 7 Bridges. But I do still do my monthly challenges over on Board Game Geek for the people who have it. And I actually have to get on that this month. And just in the future, after Hike It, my next game which is called Carnavalesco, which is a game that came out here in Brazil already. We did a crowdfunding here, and that will be coming to Kickstarter next year in the United States. And I'm really looking forward to that because TJ's played it. You played it, right?
Yep.
And that's a dice allocation game with the theme of Brazilian Carnival, right? Where you have to put the dice in the different categories where the Carnival is judged, and that's I'm really excited about that one. I'm because I've lived in Brazil, since 2004, more or less, and I've been to Carnival, and it's a theme that hasn't really been in a game before, and everybody here loved it, so we're hoping to bring it outside of Brazil next year.
Awesome. Well, TJ, Ron, I appreciate the time that you've given me this morning. I'm super excited for the game to fund. There's no doubt in my mind that it's going to fund. It's already at, you said 92% with 9 days left. It's just the people that will see it, as long as people see it, I think it's the big thing. Because as soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to do this. And I'm usually not big on a lot of different Kickstarters either. It's usually the Queen games, just because my relationship with Travis and stuff. I got early access to some of it. Like Helsinki had just got on the Kickstarter at whenever Charcon was going, and he was like, "Hey man, I got a copy if you want to play."
Yeah, well, I think we really felt that we really had something, and I don't know if you know this, but TJ and I just met for the first time at Gen Con this year because I was in Brazil and he was there in Cincinnati. So we actually all of our work was long distance, and then I was able to come to Gen Con, and we put our game in the first exposure hall there, right? And we had people lining up to play the game, and there's a person by the name of Brian Symington, and he's the board game runner, or I think that's his Instagram handle. And every year he does a list of his top 5 games that he saw at Gen Con that he wants to come out and most anticipated games. And he had the Fox Experiment, he had Starship Captains, he had Tile Tum, he had another game. That's I can't remember what it is. It's a Japanese themed game. And he had Hike It as his 5th game. So to be in that company as a prototype in the first exposure hall with all those games that had their booths and and famous designers and everything else, that was really when we kind of TJ kind of looked at each other and say, yeah, we have something here. We really have something here, not just a good game. We actually have something here. So that was really something that kind of we came out of Gen Con like floating on air, kind of, really, that TJ might not put it that way, but I'll say it, so, and that was really good. So I think, like you said, it's not really a question about the game. It's more of the question of putting more eyes on it. Right.
Yep. All right. I appreciate you guys. I'm going to stop the recording. And once I do, though, don't leave the call yet with Riverside. It still has to manually upload and everything. So as soon as we stop here, you'll get the notification once it's good to close out.
All right.
But I appreciate you guys. Hope you all have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Corey, thanks for the
lot.
spotlight. Thanks for the great interview, man.